Welcome to NYLA 2020 On Demand. This session was previously recorded for the NYLA 2020 Virtual Conference. It is available to you through December 31st, 2020. Please note, once viewed, each on-demand program is eligible for 1 continuing education credit. Links to materials and presenter contact information have been archived in a Google folder and are made available after conference. Support files and documents can be found in session files below the program description. Any questions about the NYLA 2020 Virtual Conference digital platform can be directed to Christina@nyla.org, or you can call 800-252-6952. Managing a Thriving Writers Group for Adults is sponsored by RAS. Today's presenter is Michelle Wells. Take it away, Michelle.
Thank you. As she said, my name is Michelle Wells. Hi, and welcome to Managing a Thriving Writers Group for Adults. I am the Adult Services Director for the Southeast Steuben County Library in Corning, New York. I was told that they had, when I first interviewed for the position, I was told that they had a thriving teen writers group and was asked if I'd like to create one for adults. I jumped at the chance. I've been with the library for 12 years and been a librarian for 23 years. I'm also an author myself. I write under the pen name of Melora Johnson. I have one self-published collection of poetry called A Sanctuary Built of Words. I also have a paranormal romance published by Tier Gear Publishing called Earthbound. I publish new poetry each Friday through my blog, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram accounts. And I'm currently editing a middle grade mystery novel. But the prime reason why I'm here to talk to you is that I facilitate the Corning Area Writers Group and have been doing that for the past 12 years. We have 35 members on our email list. Generally 12 to 23 members at group each week. We'll talk about pre-COVID and post-COVID situations with that. And we have 148 members on our Facebook. We have about a 50-50 male to female ratio, which is fantastic, I think. And we span the ages from 20 to 86. We have members who are teachers, nurses, people on disability, retired Air Force and Navy, homeschooling moms, accountants, computer programmer, a physical therapist, retired scientist, a retired corrections officer, retired postal worker. We have people who write horror, mystery, fantasy, poetry, nonfiction, literary fiction. And yet, I couldn't have foreseen where this group went when I started it 12 years ago. What led me to share this information is the way that the group has grown. We have had writers group members who moved away send back notes and messages about experiencing other writers groups that were either the writers group leader was hypercritical, or the group was almost more of a support group. They lacked the focus to get critique work done. And I've had requests by other librarians within my system. And simply the success of authors in my group has been wonderful to watch. But I think the most important thing that I see in this group, even beyond the writing, is the connections and the support that the group provides to each other outside writing goals. So why run a writers group for adults? Well, obviously, the literary pursuit fits in so well with the library, but there's a bigger community building aspect to the writers group. There's a saying, always be kind, because you never know what someone else is going through. Well, we have had a fascinating group of people join our writers group over the years. And you don't know what they're going through until they tell you. We have a single mom who was bipolar and agoraphobic who just convinced herself to start coming to writers group. She would come for as long as she could stand it, and it really helped her move out into the community again. She met her best friend there and made several more friends in the group. We had a divorced father of two adult girls who started coming to the group early on, and then his girls joined. Over the time, he had some medical problems and he went blind. We helped him to maintain a social connection and to keep writing. When he passed away, we helped them deal with it all, the memorial service, the obituary, and we attended the memorial as a group. There was one young man who came to group fairly regularly, then took a break, and then returned more and more sporadically. I had the sense he was being treated for something, but I didn't want to push for further information. Uh, but then toward the end, he sent me a message saying that he had been diagnosed with a terminal rare cancer 5 years before. And he was nearing the end of his journey, and he asked me to let the group know. Immediately, one of my group, who is a published author, offered to speak to his publisher if there was a book the young man wanted to rush to publication so he could have it to hold. The young man agreed. It was accepted by the publisher. I edited it and it was published. He signed copies for us that fall before he passed away just before Christmas. We attended the memorial service together, and his wife asked me to speak about what he meant to the group. And afterwards, his mother told me that she had no idea about his writing. He had told me that it was the writers group was his one place for normalcy through all of that. We have a homeschooling mother of 10, 3 sets of twins, and writers group is her outlet. It's her place to go. We had an older gentleman who joined the group thinking that writing novels would be a great hobby for his retirement. He was a retired scientist, and it was very frustrating at times because he was not a reader and knew nothing about writing stories. But we kept giving him feedback, he kept coming back, and we didn't know that through all of that, he was nursing his wife through a terminal illness. When she passed away, he wrote a poem and a letter to the local newspaper to tell them how we had helped him find his voice. I know our homeschooling mother of 10 took him meals as well. If you build a writers group that is centered on being kind and supportive, but also giving critical feedback to grow their writing, they will come and keep coming to group. They become advocates for the library, advocates with really good writing skills. It gives people who are largely introverts a community. Now, this is not group therapy, but it does give traumatized people a voice and a place to share writing that they need to get out there. Writers are often introverts. They get lonely too and want to talk. And we have a fantastic group that is both social and on task. So in our group, in the beginning, we met twice a month, Wednesday afternoon and Thursday night. Some days I sat there alone, hoping someone would show up. Then a few people started to arrive, and we began to do prompt-based free writing for 10 to 15 minutes, then share that out loud. I would have a little envelope with strips of paper that had writing prompts on them. There are numerous sources for that. I love to use Pinterest for writing prompts. and there are books of them out there. Writers often come up with them themselves. And then we have that writing to share. People eventually began bringing their own writing for critique, uh, chapters from novels, short stories, poems. At one point, we switched to a weekly meeting every Thursday night. We were doing 6 to 8 p.m. We went back and forth. We started out meeting at the library, and then my director suggested that uh, our programs move out into the community a little bit. So we started meeting half the time down at the Soulful Cup coffee shop in Corning, and it just provided a wonderful atmosphere. Unfortunately, it does get a little bit tricky when you're in a space like that, and we had some people who had hearing difficulties, and when you have competition with other voices, it made it too difficult. Plus, our group just got too big. So we moved back to the library full-time pre-COVID. Now we're using Zoom and sharing documents in Google Docs, and I'll talk a little more later about how that works. At one point, when we started doing regular critiques of work people were bringing to group, I started printing pages for people to write their critique on and send home. That went through a lot of paper, and at one point we needed a spreadsheet to keep track of all of the submissions. And I'll talk about how I worked that as well. Okay, so there is an ebb and flow of membership through the year. Attendance sort of ebbs based on the season. Some people won't come out in the winter, some go south, some go away in the summer. Like I said, we have 35 people signed up, but they tend to balance out, never all showing up at the same time. The most we've had, I believe, was 23 people at one meeting, which it's quite a bit. It's a lot to handle. Now, as I said, we're meeting through Zoom. We get less people at the Zoom meetings these days. So how does it all work? There's quite a bit of prep work involved. Not as much now as there was pre-COVID. I still ask members to send me up to 12 pages of double-spaced manuscript, 12-point font, 1-inch margins, via email to me in advance. I use a spreadsheet to keep track of the date the submission arrives, the name of the author, the title. If it's a section of something, like say they're sending me chapter 4, part A, because it's a long chapter. When I was doing printing of the pages, I would include the date that I printed it and then the date that we read it in group. We rotated whose work we read each week based on people who didn't get to read the previous week get the first shot the next week. And then after that, I base it on when the documents came into my email. On Wednesdays, I create the reading lineup for Thursday and send that to everybody via email and post it on Facebook. I include who's reading and the chapter or the short story of whatever they're reading so that they can correct me if I made a mistake in what I should be printing. On Thursday, the documents go up on Google Docs, and I lock those Google Docs down so that the link that I'm sending out is only for people to comment on the document. They cannot download it, and they cannot edit it. I send those links out along with the Zoom link on Thursday. On Thursday night, we meet and the writer reads their work or asks someone else and feedback is given. I do wait a couple days before I take the documents down from Google Docs. That way, if somebody couldn't make it to the meeting, they can add comments over the weekend, or if someone thinks of a comment that they should have said during the group, they can add that later. At the group, new members are encouraged to attend a meeting or two, listen and participate before submitting their own work. So what does a meeting look like? We're a critique group mainly at this point. We read, share, listen, and respond. Pre-COVID, we had typically 15 to 20 people at each meeting, writing in all genres and formats. Right now, through Zoom, we typically have more like 12 to 15 people, which is still a fair bit. Whenever there is a new person, we introduce ourselves. We just go around the group and give our name and what we write. The writer reads their own work or asks someone, such as myself, to read for them so that they can hear what they've written. This is really often helpful because we sometimes read what we expect and not what's actually on the page. Members offer fellow writers 2 things they enjoyed about the piece, can be general or specific, then a couple things to improve, again, general or specific. I also do ask authors frequently to give a quick summary of their backstory when there's a new person there or somebody who hasn't been there for a while. Writers hate to do that, but it's really good practice. We can get through one piece of writing in about 30 minutes, 20 minutes to read, and 10 minutes to critique. People who have something to say go ahead and speak. Sometimes I lead off. Tricky pieces. When there is a rough or sensitive topic, I will often try to jump in and address things first. I remember one piece of writing that was very rough, and everyone was concerned, not sure what to say. I focused on 2 things I liked and gave 2 broad things to focus on to improve the piece. And I got a note from another member of the group saying she was so moved by how the piece was handled, but I was just working the process. You don't get into nitty-gritty when a piece of writing is really rough. Towards the end of sharing on that piece, I will encourage members to share some more comments. I'll say, does anyone have questions, comments, or suggestions for, say, Allison, before we move on to the next piece? You have to let people socialize a little bit and have fun too while staying on task. There was a lot more chatter when we were meeting in person than there is on Zoom. You still get a little bit, people will say hi or bye in the comments, which can be a little distracting, but it's not nearly as much as when we were meeting in person. I like to say that I facilitate instead of teaching the group. It's not a class. We all learn from each other. Okay. I'm losing track here. I know there's some other things I wanted to hit on. So in person, if you're doing in-person groups, it can get pretty rowdy with people talking and laughing. People are generally respectful during the reading, but little side conversations sometimes seem to start up during the critique part. So if it gets distracting, I will say something like, Jason, I'm sorry, but I can't hear what Allison is saying, and I'm not sure Mike can either. That way, the person who's getting critiqued gets to hear it. This is a view of what our Zoom meetings look like these days. As you can see, you can have two screens open at the same time as long as the internet connection allows for it. And people can see the other group members on the side, the person who's talking, and the others who are there. And then in the other screen, you have the Google Doc, and people can be putting comments on that at the same time that somebody is reading. It's really adds a social element to the group so that you're not just giving critique on a piece of writing without getting to hear other people's voices. It's really nice to see the group members without a face mask on. So I think that's one benefit of Zoom or any other Zoom-like um, software that you want to use. Our library has a subscription to Zoom. Personal subscription runs about $15 a month. We are saving money by not printing out documents, and we've all agreed that we're going to continue to do that. We're going to continue to use Google Docs when we go back to meeting in person. I do have some people who have been asking about meeting in person again, and right now our library is a little bit in flux. So I say we will eventually, but I can't say when, and it won't be like it was before. Before we met for 2.5 hours, people were bringing baked goods, and it was like the weekly party for the introverts. Now, if we do meet in person, I'm going to have to limit it to probably about an hour because we're going to have to meet with masks on. There can't be any eating or drinking, and we're going to have to be 6 feet apart. Some people are upset by this. They want to get back to normal, but I try to explain to them that normal isn't going to be the way it was for a little while longer. So we have to be patient. I have been enjoying the Zoom. Okay, if we have challenging situations and writing, um, I tend to focus on the mechanics and the technique of writing rather than the content. Let people have their say, get it off their chest without letting it devolve. I remember I had, in particular, one situation, and this has happened a few times, but two guys get to arguing about something. I let them have their say, but if they begin to repeat themselves, that's a sign that you need to move on. I'll say something like, we need to table this discussion. You can debate this more after the group if you like, but we need to move on to the next piece of writing. I do remind people to be tolerant of opposing viewpoints. Critique the writing, not the content. I may have to remind them occasionally about what makes a good writers group. I'll tell them, and this is also in the email that I occasionally send out to remind people about sort of the requirements for being part of the group. You have to give constructive feedback, supportive but critical so that they can improve. And you have to accept feedback graciously. And I make recommendations about that. Just say thank you, or I'll take that into consideration. You don't need to rebut or argue about something. You're the owner of the piece. There's no need to argue. When it comes to handling adult content, vulgarities, expletives, violence, even sexual content, and politics, I do require that all participants in the group must be 18 or over to attend. I ask that people give warnings about any sensitive content. If there's violence or sexual content, some people are not comfortable with that. I invite people who are too uncomfortable with the content to take a 20-minute break while the piece is read. Most people stay. Occasionally, somebody will take the break. There's no harm, no foul. It's okay. And we try to make that clear. I will try to read ahead or just skim to make a decision about how to handle certain pieces. Most writers will give me a heads up if there is a part that they think might be sensitive. Sometimes they're uncomfortable reading it. We can stop reading out loud and just let those who are comfortable read the rest silently and write comments on the document or in the comment section. It all works out. I do find nobody's bringing erotica to a group like this. Nobody is that insensitive. Now, when you're starting a group like this, it takes time to build up. It takes time for people to get comfortable, trust the group, and just plain time to write before they can submit for critique. So it's always good to have topics to discuss when no one is submitting work for critique. As I said before, we did free writing together and shared that, but then I might pick an article from Writer's Digest or Poets and Writers. And there's lots of great topics to cover that are of interest to writers. You have people at different points in their writing career. Some may need more mechanics information, grammar and punctuation when it comes to writing narrative or something like that. So we would do sort of a combination of that type of thing. We'd talk about pantsing versus plotting books, methods of plotting short stories and books, different forms of poetry to try, writing query letters, author website design, pitch wars on Twitter, and writing taglines for books, how to create book trailers, how to promote your writing, book cover design, self-publishing versus traditional publishing. There's a lot of topics out there. All you need to do is take a look at a Writer's Digest or Poets and Writers, and you will find numerous things to work with. We do have a private Facebook group, and this grew out of the writers group. Keeping it private makes introverts a lot more comfortable, and that is very important. We do daily prompts on there, usually a picture, an audio link to a music video, a textual prompt, including sometimes dialogue. For instance, this morning I shared a picture of a half-bushel basket of tomatoes, and I used a quote from uh, from Dorothy Parker. What fresh hell is this? It gives us space to interact and share during the week, articles on writing, memes about writing, inspiration, information. We have a copy editor who volunteered to put up tips monthly, and those are just fantastic. You can see a little picture on the right there. That's a screenshot. I post the reading lineup for Thursday on the Facebook page on Wednesday, and that allows people to, or it reminds them that they are up to read this week, and if they can't be there, they should really let me know. Now, with the Facebook group, we did find the need to create an admin policy statement. For the most part, people are kind and courteous on there, but once or twice we have gotten into a debate and we needed to create some parameters around that. We keep posts on topic. I ask that they make sure posts are related to books, writing, or being an author in some way. They could be humorous takes or potential prompts, but spam or irrelevant links aren't allowed. I had one lady at one point started sharing information about a product that she was selling as a representative, and I spoke to her about that via messaging and said, I'm sorry, I really don't think that's appropriate for our group. She took it very nicely and we took it down, but we do have to watch out for things like that. I asked them to limit to 2 posts per day. I had one person who started hitting the group with post after post of memes, and it was just a little bit much, so the other things were getting lost. I asked them to limit promotions. This has not been a problem. Um, Several authors have books that they are selling, and it's great for them to share that information with the group. It's inspirational to other writers. We just want to keep it limited. If it gets to be too much, I said, we'll take a look at creating a thread once a week where authors can promote their own books, but we haven't had to do that. I ask that they respect everyone's privacy, just like being part of the writers group, being in the private Facebook group. It requires mutual trust. Um, what's shared in the group should stay in the group. One type of program that has grown out of the writers group, or in parallel to the writers group, I should say, is write-ins. These are an outgrowth, or were first introduced to me from National Novel Writing Month, which is a wonderful program. If you haven't seen that, I highly recommend you check it out, nanowrimo.org. They created a program where in November, people are encouraged to write a novel of at least 50,000 words in 1 month. It's quite a challenge, and you're only competing against yourself. And write-ins kind of go along with this. So we started out with having 3 write-ins in November. We did a kickoff on the first day, a write-in at the middle, and then one at the end. We quickly found that the end ones were not well attended. They just weren't worth it. The middle was hit or miss. So basically we do a kickoff now, but they became so popular because it is just this fantastic energy when you're all writing together. So we usually do one midwinter, say February, and then one in the summertime. Write-ins involve space for people to work, outlets for the laptops, because at some point somebody's laptop is not going to survive very long if it's not plugged in. Batteries just are not that reliable. Good food. I generally, for a lot of my programs, because I have a budget, will do pizza, a veggie platter, grapes, cookies, some chocolate, and then what I found is writers like to share food. They like to bring food to share. So I have one person that does these amazing stuffed mushrooms. One gentleman likes to make his own pickles and jar jellies and jams and relishes, so he will bring some of that. We have another person who just loves to cook all sorts of things, so she brings amazing stuff to regular writers groups and to write-ins. And I do buffalo wing dip, and I've done some other things. I try to make sure that there is some gluten-free stuff there as well for those who can't have that. Simple games are a part of a write-in. Writing sprints, which you set up a time, you tell people, okay, we're going to start a writing sprint, mark where you are in your document. We're going to write for 10 minutes, and then when I call time, they check their word count. The person who's written the most words in 10 minutes gets a prize. Sometimes the person who's written the least words gets a prize. We also created one called Best and Worst Line. I hand out 2 pieces of paper towards the end of the write-in. People write down best line on one, worst line on the other, and their name on each. and then they write in their best and worst lines and they give them back to me. I don't read out the person's name, but I read out the lines and people vote by show of hands on the best and worst lines and they get prizes. I pull prizes from a few different places. We get lots of book donations, including audiobooks at our library. So I use some of those. I go to the dollar store um, and other places that have sales going on or something. Mugs, flash drives, fun little plaques, pens, notebooks, all sorts of good stuff. It can be really hard curtailing the talking so that people actually write. Writing sprints are great for that. Uh, it gets everybody focused on their writing again. Some people put their earbuds in and forge ahead no matter what. Some people like to chat a lot. We usually go for 3 hours, and then some people want to go out and party afterwards, get a bite to eat. That's typical with our group. It's just become such a friendly community. They like to arrive early for writers group and talk, and then they'll go out for a bite to eat nearby afterwards. I am planning to do a write-in online this year in November. Probably do some more writing prompts and use e-gift cards as door prizes. I did that over the summer with our adult writing program. They worked pretty well. Barnes and Nobles, you can get a $10 e-gift card. Our local bookstore also does $10 e-gift cards. As I said, the energy of working in a room full of writers, all creating their own thing, is really amazing. So I highly recommend write-ins, whether you're ready to do a full writers group or not. And a lot of people do end up joining us in the writers group because they come to a write-in. You can post the write-ins on nanowrimo.org in the regional group, and that lets people know where they're going to be, and then people join us for the writers group after that. We've also started doing an annual conference. Learning together is another, just outgrowth of writers group. Here's an example of our annual writers conference. I think this was 2 years ago. Some of the people presenting are from our local group, and then I pulled in one regional author and also a local editor. We had from 10 to 11 in the morning, What Editors Look For with Patrick Thomas. He's an author and editor that is part of our group. From 11 to noon, Christy Jackson Nicholas and I did plotting or pantsing your novel. I took the pantsing and she took the plotting. We did a noon to 12:30 pitch your book, but that was a little trickier. I'd have to work on that if I were going to do it again. And then 12:30 to 2, we had lunch and just networking, talking. They love to talk once they get to know each other. 2 to 3, Leslie Daniels, a regional author, did a presentation on From Writing to Publishing. And from 3 to 4, a local editor, Karen Bizantz, did a program on editing your author bio. This year, luckily, I had decided to do something a little different and focus on publishing with a workshop with Leslie Daniels. And I was very lucky because we usually do this annual conference in March and our library closed and sent us all home to work in February. So it was very fortuitous because it was easy to transition that workshop to a Zoom environment. We also did our first local author book fair last November, and you can see a picture of that on the right. We had readings by the participating authors. Everybody got about 15 minutes. We had food. I did cupcakes with little book covers. I took each of the author's book covers, printed them out, and then glued or stapled them onto toothpicks and stuck them in the top of the cupcakes. We had prizes. Um, I had a volunteer taking people's names as they came in the door and giving them tickets for prize drawings, and we had prize drawings throughout. Um, it was a fairly small turnout, but everybody had a really wonderful time, and I think if we work on that in the future, we can get a better turnout. And this, lastly, is a picture of one of our recent Zoom meetings. Um, we have a number of local authors there in the picture. On the top, on the right-hand side, outlined in yellow, is Christy Jackson Nicholas. She has a 9-part Druids Brooch series out, which is historical Irish fantasy fiction. So fascinating stories. G.H. Monroe is one of our authors, and he has 2 books out, a collection of poetry and a series of short stories called That's My Story. Not pictured here, Patrick Thomas also writes under Patrick T. Phibbs, and he has many wonderful series. For adults, he has Murphy's Lore and Dear Cthulhu. My favorites are his kids' books under Patrick T. Phibbs, The Ugaboos, and Babe E. Bear Mysteries. We have Joseph Gary Krantz, also not pictured. He pops in from time to time, and he has a series called The Last Coon Hunter, which he calls Family Saga, and that is set in the Painted Post area and is a very warm, lovely series of books. And in the bottom left corner, it says Rebecca, but that is Michelle Pointis Burns, and she has just released her first book. She went through the writers group, and then she hired a professional editor and has done hired somebody to do the book cover, but she has worked really hard to self-publish her first cozy mystery, Say Cheese and Murder, and it is both funny and a great little mystery. She had originally written it as a party game for one of her children, and then came to writers group and worked with us to turn it into a novel. And it is out on Amazon as a download, and on October 24th it will release in hard copy through, I believe, Ingram Spark. Whoops. And lastly, I wish you were here to ask me questions. I love presenting to groups, but since you're not, please feel free to contact me. If you do have any questions, drop me a line, let me know how you found this presentation, whether you think it'll be useful to you. I would love to hear from you. My email is there, wellsm@stls.org. I will be turning in handouts that you should receive along with this program. There's a copy of the presentation in a PDF form, a PDF of our Corning Area Writers Group pamphlet, which honestly I stole from another group and added to for my own group. The email that I send out to new members to show them how we do what we do and how they can join us. And then a reminder of membership obligations, which I sent out recently to my group, and I think it really helped. And I have said it in group, but I think the email kind of made it a little more concrete. So I will share that with everybody. And I hope you enjoyed the presentation and that you found it useful. I would love to hear from you, as I said. Just drop me a line through my email. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michelle. And just a reminder to everyone watching that all of these handouts and support documents can be found in the Session Files tab, which is right below the program description. So this concludes the NYLA 2020 On-Demand Program Managing a Thriving Writers Group for Adults. We hope you continue to take advantage of all the on-demand and live programs the NYLA 2020 Annual Virtual Conference has to offer. Thank you for helping us make this the best virtual conference ever.